Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something that, well, hasn't made huge headlines everywhere, but it carries enormous implications for global power dynamic, especially in Asia. We're talking about a massive new infrastructure project in China.
That's right.
And what we're unpacking today comes from a recent analysis, one that really spotlights this project and its, frankly, surprising ripple effects. Our mission, as always, is to pull out the most important insights from this material, help you get informed on what could be a really critical geopolitical shift. And, there's some facts in here that might make you rethink some assumptions.
Yeah, what's really fascinating, I think, is how things that seem totally separate, like a huge concrete dam on one hand, and maybe something more abstract like military confidence on the other, how they can actually converge, and how that convergence can reshape an entire region profoundly. So yeah, we'll dig into the Yaxia Hydropower Project at scale, where it came from historically, and then crucially connect it to some, unexpected military stuff that helps explain this very curious silence from a key downstream neighbor. A silence that's almost unprecedented.
Okay, let's definitely unpack that. So the Yaxia Hydropower Project, it's located in the lower reaches of the Yarlung Tsangpo River in China. Just hearing the basic numbers, the scale alone is staggering.
It really is. I mean, this isn't just another big project. It's a colossus. Our source puts the investment at 1.2 trillion yuan.
1.2 trillion.
Yeah, which immediately makes it the world's largest infrastructure project, just by cost. And to give you some perspective, you're looking at something roughly 10 times the financial scale of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. And that was already a huge undertaking.
10 times that bridge.
That's
That's immense. So what exactly are they building for that kind of money? What does it look like?
Well, the plan involves 5 huge power stations, mega power stations, each one potentially sitting at over 2,000 meters elevation. So they're really tapping into the river's power coming off the Tibetan Plateau.
Right.
The combined total installed capacity is projected at 60 million kilowatts.
60 million.
Yeah. And again, for context, that's potentially up to 3 times the capacity of China's, iconic Three Gorges Dam.
Wow, 3 times Three Gorges.
Which itself was just monumental, right? So this isn't just adding a bit more power, it's fundamentally changing China's energy map.
Okay, and here's something I found really interesting. This project, it's newly announced, yes, but the idea for something this big on the Yarlung Tsangpo, it's not new at all.
Not at all.
Our source says the concept actually goes way back, like to Mao's time. And it was discussed, studied under later leaders, too, like Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. So this wasn't just cooked up overnight.
Absolutely not. And that, it raises a really important point about China's long-term strategic thinking, their ambition, their patience. For decades, the engineering challenge was just seen as too big, too difficult. But China's expertise in hydropower, it's matured hugely.
Mm-hmm.
Think about everything they learned from building Three Gorges, plus all that experience building huge dams and infrastructure overseas.
Right, they build everywhere now.
Exactly. So the Yaxia project, you could say it marks the realization of decades of planning, yes, but also technological progress and a very persistent strategic vision. It really speaks to that long game thinking.
Okay, let's talk economics, too.
Yeah.
Because clearly a project this size is also a major stimulus inside China.
Oh, definitely.
After the announcement, shares in Chinese power companies, construction firms, they jumped. Some saw gains, as high as 65%.
That's right. It's seen as a form of deficit-driven growth, which might sound a bit odd to some listeners. What does that actually mean here?
Yeah, explain that a bit.
So it's a key concept. Deficit-driven growth basically means the government is deliberately ramping up its spending, often by taking on debt, right? But they're investing it in these massive long-term projects like this dam. The thinking is this huge upfront spending, it stimulates the economy now, creates jobs.
Okay.
And it builds these long-term national assets that are expected to generate returns, generate benefits for decades. So instead of, tightening the belt, they're loosening it strategically to inject some vitality.
And the jobs number is huge, too.
Yeah, our source suggests it could create over 1 million jobs, and that provides a much-needed boost right now, given China's recent deflationary challenges. That's been a real worry for Beijing.
Okay, and what about the energy side? Beyond just the raw power output, what are the wider effects for China?
Well, the energy benefits are pretty clear. This project could massively reduce China's reliance on coal. It's a huge step for cleaner energy, for meeting their emissions targets.
Right, big climate implications.
Big time. It could also drastically cut emissions from winter heating in key areas and, importantly, lessen their dependence on foreign energy imports. So it boosts energy security, too.
But what about the environment? Dams this size always have impacts.
They do, and that's crucial to acknowledge. All large dams carry big environmental risks, especially one on this scale in this sensitive region. However, the source does note that Chinese officials claim they've learned lessons from Three Gorges. They say they're taking a more cautious, ecologically sensitive approach with Yaxia.
Okay.
They even suggest it could help with flood control downstream, though, that kind of claim is often met with a lot of skepticism from the countries downstream.
Understandably. Okay, so that's the domestic picture complex, but lots of benefits for China. But this is where the international angle gets really sharp, particularly for India.
Exactly.
India is downstream, and a project this enormous, done apparently unilaterally without consultation on a shared river. I mean, traditionally, that's seen as almost an act of aggression, right?
It absolutely is.
You'd expect really strong diplomatic protests, maybe even threats. But India's response, so far it's been, well, quiet. Very quiet. No big official protests, no strong statements. And that seems highly unusual. Perplexing even. Why the silence?
And the silence, according to the analysis we're looking at, might be the most critical part of this whole story. It seems to reflect much deeper issues for India, maybe, frankly, unsettling ones.
Yeah.
The source directly links India's quiet reaction to a recent air combat incident, one that wasn't widely reported, but apparently involved India suffering a devastating 6-0 defeat against Pakistan.
Wait, a 6-0 defeat in air combat? That's not just startling. That's deeply humiliating for any modern Air Force.
It is.
What exactly happened there, and why haven't we heard more about this?
Well, our source details that Indian Rafale jets, which are, advanced, expensive French aircraft, they were reportedly outmaneuvered by Pakistani pilots. And here's the key part. The Pakistani pilots were flying Chinese-made J-10C fighters. And these J-10s were equipped with PL-15 beyond visual range missiles. Now, the PL-15 is a very capable missile, no doubt, but, and this is crucial, it's considered older tech by China's current standards.
Older tech.
Meaning China itself has even more advanced missiles already deployed. So this reported defeat, this shock, it has apparently just profoundly rattled Indian military confidence.
So it's not just the loss itself, but the way they lost, exposing a technological gap, a vulnerability so deep that maybe challenging China directly on the dam becomes almost unthinkable right now, because it might expose that weakness even further.
That seems to be the core argument from the source, yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned older tech. For those PL-15s, that's so significant because it implies the real gap is even wider.
Right. Can you elaborate on that? What did that tech gap mean in practice during that incident?
The details in the source are quite stark. These PL-15 missiles reportedly have a range up to 200 kilometers, and they apparently struck before the Indian pilots even realized they were being targeted.
Before they even knew.
That's the report. Think about it. Traditional air combat involves reacting to radar, seeing the enemy, but with these long-range missiles, the fight could be over before one side even registers a threat on their systems.
Wow. It's like playing chess, but your opponent makes moves from another room, and you only find out when your king is taken.
That's a good analogy. And here's the real kicker, the part that underlines the scale of the problem for India. China's current generation stealth jets, the J-20s, they're equipped with newer PL-17 missiles, and those reportedly have double the range of the PL-15.
Double the range, so 400 kilometers.
Potentially, yes. So the gap isn't just large, it seems to be widening rapidly.
The implication of that disparity is just huge. If China's current tech is potentially twice as capable as what Pakistan reportedly used to get a 6-0 result, what does that suggest about a potential, full-scale conflict between India and China themselves?
It's a truly sobering thought. The source suggests that in a major conflict scenario, China might have the capability to neutralize India's entire fighter fleet, maybe 200, 300 jets, with potentially minimal risk to its own advanced aircraft.
That fundamentally changes the military balance in the region.
Completely. And it's not just fighters. The analysis also mentions that India's efforts against drones, which are obviously critical now, were reportedly ineffective against Chinese-supplied anti-drone tech that Pakistan used.
So it's a broader technological and maybe even doctrinal gap that's been exposed.
That seems to be the interpretation, yes, across multiple domains.
Okay, that paints a very stark picture. Is there any way for India to try and close this gap, even in the medium term? The source mentions F-35s from the U.S.
Right. The source suggests that acquiring F-35s might be India's only real path to even start matching China's capabilities in the air. But then it immediately says the U.S. is apparently very unlikely to sell them to India.
Why? Why would the U.S. hesitate, especially if they see this growing imbalance?
Well, it boils down to strategic trust and the fear of technology transfer. The source highlights real concerns within the U.S. security establishment. That sensitive F-35 technology, especially its stealth features, its integrated systems, its software, could somehow fall into enemy hands.
You mean fall into Chinese or Russian hands, perhaps via Pakistan or other routes?
Potentially, yes, or just be compromised in some way. The source draws a historical parallel, interestingly, to Germany being reluctant to give its most advanced weapons to Italy during World War II. Same fear that the tech might get compromised or used in ways that ultimately hurt the supplier.
Okay, I see.
So as it stands, the analysis concludes that no major arms supplier, not France, not the US, not Russia, can really bridge this huge tech gap for India anytime soon.
And domestically, can India build its own?
Well, the source is pretty blunt here. It says India currently lacks the necessary industrial base, the advanced manufacturing capability, to produce systems comparable to the J-20 or PL-17 on its own. Not in the near term, anyway.
So, no quick fixes, no easy options. Which means India, faced with this apparent military gap, is seemingly choosing to avoid confrontation over the dam altogether.
Exactly. It makes a grim kind of strategic sense. Challenging China directly right now could be politically disastrous domestically if it further exposed these weaknesses.
So the silence isn't weakness necessarily, but maybe a calculated, albeit difficult strategic choice?
It appears that way. A quiet acceptance, perhaps, of a new, harsher reality dictated by this military assessment. It's risk management.
Okay. And that brings us back to the dam itself and what the source calls the water weapon aspect. This is the critical long-term consequence, isn't it?
It really is. Strategically, the Yaxia project gives China enormous leverage. It controls the headwaters of the Brahmaputra River, which is absolutely vital as it flows down through India and into Bangladesh.
So it's like the situation India historically had with Pakistan over the Indus waters, but now China has that kind of leverage over India.
Precisely. That's the analogy the source implies. China essentially gets control of the tap. Theoretically, they could reduce the water flow during critical dry seasons. That would impact agriculture, hydropower, drinking water for millions in northeast India and Bangladesh.
Or the opposite. They could release water to cause floods.
Or, conversely, release massive amounts suddenly to worsen monsoon floods. Either way, it creates immense potential leverage, humanitarian, economic, political, all without needing to fire a shot. This dam fundamentally shifts the power balance in a very tangible, long-term way. It's not just about potential conflict, it's about day-to-day pressure.
Yeah, the source makes that really provocative point. The dam isn't just about generating electric power. It's about geopolitical power.
Exactly.
It perfectly illustrates how something like infrastructure, when combined with clear military dominance, can just fundamentally reshape the dynamic, establish new facts on the ground, quietly.
And if you connect all these dots, the superior military tech, the resulting diplomatic quietness from India, and now this huge hydrological leverage, China clearly holds the upper hand. India is left with very limited options, at least for now. The source even argues that, given its unilateral nature and the power it confers, the project itself is, in effect, a kind of silent act of war, a strategic fate accompanied with profound consequences.
That is a sobering reality.
Yeah.
A really sobering conclusion. This whole deep dive into the Yaxia project, it just reveals how these technical infrastructure developments can be so deeply tied to military realities and how they can alter regional power balances, maybe without most of us even noticing.
Yeah, what really stands out for me is the stark illustration of how military disparity can directly shape diplomacy. When one side believes it has a clear military and tech edge, it just changes the entire conversation. It can lead to this kind of quiet acceptance, this silence, where maybe just a few years ago you would have seen loud confrontation. It's a powerful reminder that military strength isn't just about fighting wars, it's about shaping the peace, shaping the day-to-day interactions between nations.
So as we've explored, the Yaxia project offers China significant economic and energy wins, yes. But for India, it presents this major long-term strategic challenge, and it all seems to stem from this newly exposed, or perhaps newly realized, military gap. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other huge infrastructure projects are out there around the world that might be silently reshaping geopolitical landscapes right under our noses?
A crucial question. Until next time, stay informed and keep exploring.